Hello, I am Lizzy with Long Distance Gamers. We are a group of friends who play games remotely due to living in different states. Today we are talking about Excavation Earth. What do I think about it? And more importantly, how do we play it remotely? Now before we get started, there are two different sides. The running side, they for sure have a copy of the game and they play the game mostly like normal. The remote side may or may not have a copy. We will be going over how the remote side sets up and how the remote side responds to the game. So this is Excavation Earth. We have set it up with all of everything divided, and we are now ready for the running side to tell us how to finish setting up. We have divided the cards into colors, and the tiles we have separated into colors as well as the design in the corner. In our group, we do call them specific things. So we have a C, a boot, a greater than, a pretty box, which these don't have any designs in the corners. These are a Kickstarter expansion, so you may or may not have that in your box. And then we also have a lightning. The ones that are starred are ones that have varying artwork between the two of them. The rest of them are all unique artworks for theirs. As far as these cards go, for placing the meeples in each of the different markets, I actually just keep these back in the box, as the side that is running will determine how they come out. And then I have a stack of these white contract cards that just sit next to this. Something you have probably noticed by now is how enormous of a space this game takes up. Mighty Boards is awesome. They definitely live up to their names of being a mighty board. This is a hefty piece. And this actually would look really nice combined with the artwork down there. I just don't have the space, so it comes up to here so that everyone can still see it. The first thing the running side will do is they will send this to all players. I do use OBS software for using for remote games, so I can go ahead and put names to individual player mats, as well as I can go ahead and put this reference card up here. However, it is very small, so it's not always the best. But when we do play, I usually have that up so that everyone can refer to it and see. And then we will go ahead and finish setting up. The running side will go ahead and hand out the cards. I always put them in card holders. And then the first time we played this game, I was the only one with the copy. So I went ahead and put initials in the corner of the card holders, as I was constantly pulling these up and down to be able to show them what was in their hands, and I didn't want to get confused because it's also on the back side. So what the running side will do, we'll hand out each of these cards, which this is probably an anathema to some people, but in order to be able to clearly see if it's a 2, a 3, or a 4 energy cell card, we have written 2, 3, and 4 in the corners just so that it's easier to see for remote play. And then the rest of the cards are sprawled out. Something to note is if you are the running side, you do want to generally have them so that the star symbol is on top and that they are spread out to the point that the next card starts about where the star symbol is, so that way they have plenty of ways to see both the color as well as the symbol. So the running side will go ahead and hold this up to the camera. The remote side will go through each of the stacks and pull them out and put them in here. And then while we are on the cards, we will go ahead and do the survey forecast. We go ahead and place 4 cards out for a 3-player game. As you can imagine, where on earth are we going to put it? We place it over this beautiful artwork down here. Unfortunately for remote play, sometimes you have to cover artwork in order for you to be able to efficiently play the game. And one thing to note, before we start pulling these cards, we have named all of these markets based on what they look like. So we have bug, fist, star, flower, hazard, and tentacle, which that will come into importance when we fill this surveyor forecast. For instance, we can have an orange star. So we go ahead and pull orange star. Then orange fist, okay. Then we have yellow star. And blue flower. you will go ahead and find the blue flower. Once all sides with the copy have those set up, we go ahead and do the tiles. So we will do them in the order on the board, starting with yellow. So we will start placing on the board and then we will place the black market. So yellow would be C, greater than, and boot. While the C and the greater than do have different designs, we have found that it doesn't impact gameplay. It's just for variety. So we don't worry about that too much. Let me go ahead and place these out. And then we do the black market. The running side will go ahead and start from the bottom up, so that way you could easily build it. So they might say yellow CC and lightning bolt. So the CC, we're on bottom, and then we have the lightning bolt. And those go right there. And then we move on to blue. So blue might be greater than, and C. We pull those out. And then the black market could be the pretty box, the lightning bolt, and then the boot. And we continue this on through until we get through the orange. And then something to note, if there are multiples on a stack, we do offset them a little bit, especially if a side does not have a copy. So that way they can see that there are more than one. And then if we do have three, we do go ahead and place it back this way so that you can see that there are multiple, but you might have to ask however many are in there when you see that it is lined properly on top. And then we go ahead and fill each of the market. We start with the one bug. This is where the running side is, flipping over these cards to be able to determine which ones come up here. So we might have orange, red, blue, and they do specify it in the order that they pull it, with the first color being the one on the bottom going towards the top. Then fire would be yellow, blue, blue. And this continues until all 6 markets are filled. Once the markets are filled, you are ready to start the game. Based on the initiative of the player boards, determines the initiative down here, and Brooks has the lowest, so he is first player. During your turn, you have a few different actions that you can take. Your first one is you travel. For that, you just simply discard a card from your hand, and you can travel that many fuel cells. So these are exclusively for travel. Well, these ones you can always travel 3, but they also have other uses. Excavation is where you discard one of these colors, matching the region you're in. So when we start on the market for 1 and market for 4. And then your first turn of the game is when you decide where you want to place yours. So Brooksby gets to go first, so we'll look at Brooksby's hand. Brooksby doesn't have a whole lot of purple in his hand, but there are a lot of purple markets, so he's going to go ahead and come over to this spot for his first, for finishing setup. So when he goes, he can go ahead and do the excavate. So he would go ahead and turn the purple in. If he is the side running the game, he would just simply state that he is playing a purple card. If he is on the remote side, he needs to specify which card that is in his hand. So you just agree on which side is 1 and you count up. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the number 6 card. So he will just say that he is playing his number 6 card. The running side will take it, hold it up to the camera. He will confirm, yes, that is the card that I want to play. And then that gets put in this card. And he can take the excavation action. So because he's in a spot with 2 tiles and he can place them on his board, he can go ahead and place them in his hold. These can come from the black market. You must have space to be able to place them in this area to be able to take that action. Each turn you do take 2 actions. So that was his first action. So now he gets to decide what he wants to do for a second. And then he could take the market card if he has a flower or a pill bug in his hand, which he has neither. So what that would be is he would discard the card matching the market that he's in, and then he could perform 1, 2, or 3 of the following actions. He could assign one of his crew cubes to that location. He could add a wild buyer to the market, and then he could add a colored buyer. Now, in order to do the adding of the color, it has to be adding after the white, the wild buyer. So if you want to add the wild buyer, you would have to add the wild buyer first and then add the color. So if we want to add another purple, go ahead and do that. And then these all squish down, and then the orange would be returned to the supply, making purple even more valuable and orange less so. If Brixby had done the market action to be able to add some of his workers to different locations, he could then choose to sell. What he would do is he would discard a card from his hand. It can be just any card. He doesn't really want to collect these oranges, so he will go ahead and say that he's going to discard this one. So he will count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He will play his 7th card, and then he would be able to sell to 2 markets. So he would choose a color or a region. So he would choose this purple region, and then he would be able to sell his 2 purple artifacts because he has representation and there are purple there. When that happens, he would just specify that he wants to sell his 2 purple ones, his 2 purple lightning, to market 3 and market 4, which we just have to calculate its popularity, and it is the highest, so he will go ahead and get 9 credit. And then he will go ahead and be selling to all of these, so he gets 2 credits per buyer, so that's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Because he did 2 different markets, he does also get a bonus. You get to draw 1 card from the deck and add it to your hand, and he also gets 3 more credits. So he just made 22 bucks on that sale. Of course, he wouldn't have been able to do all of that in his first turn simply because of actions. This is just giving you an example of how it plays. And then he can move 1 of each of his workers to the command center. So we have 1 from the flower and 1 from the star. And all these buyers then move to the mothership, where they will wait until someone else buys, and then they would go back to the supply. Another action that could be taken is command. For the command actions, let's say that he had previously moved, so he had moved 1 and 2 from this location. So he is now on the 3 market or the star market. He does have a star card, so he could go ahead and do this action. So he discards the card, and then he would have also had to have a person in that market, so he would have had to do the market action before this again. And this, you could either move this guy over to here, or you can recall a guy from here back to your supply. Another thing you could do to interact with the black market would be to smuggle. If he would be on the black market space, he would have to discard either a flower or a tentacle, and then he would be able to interact. You could either upload 2 artifacts of different regions, so essentially different colors. For instance, I did these 2, so they are different colors, and you would earn credits equal to its listed value. So you would get 9 credits for those 2, and then they get placed at the bottom of the stacks. Or you could acquire 2 different regions from there. Again, just 2 different colors. It just has to be from the top. And you just have to spend the face value plus 1. So if I wanted these 2, I would have to spend 7 for this one, 2 for this one, so I'd have to spend 9 total. And then they could go into the black market spaces on the board instead of the normal spaces. So it does open up a little bit more options for placement. And then one more thing, whenever you take tiles, you can make samples, which is just placing one of your cubes in that area. So Brixby had the lightning bolt purple, so he could have put it on the lightning bolt purple. If you get them all covered, they are worth victory points at the end of the game, which again, for remote players, I would highly recommend sending them a picture of this, so that way they can see the different values at the end. When you do complete one of these columns, you do go ahead and get 2 cards as soon as it's completed. Another action you could do is to survey. You just have to play a card from your hand. So say Brixby doesn't want this fist, but he wants a flower. You can go ahead and take the flower, and that just gets added to his hand. And then of course you do go ahead and select the cards in the same way as before, starting from 1, then counting from 1 up to the card in his hand and selecting that number. And then he adds his crew cube to it, and he can take the lowest initiative token so that he will still be first player next round. And then you draw 2 tokens from the supply. So say he got a red boot and a purple boot. So he has to choose one of these to place on the dig site. So he's no longer interested in purple, so he will go ahead and place the purple out here. And then the red, you could either shuffle it back into the supply pile, so put it back into the bag, or he could pay double its list value to add it to his store. So he could go ahead and pay 8 to add it to here. And then because he added a token, he can go ahead and add one of his cubes. So he can go ahead and go red boot. During the 3rd round, it does change to, instead of grabbing the cards and putting a cube as well as taking the initiative token, you would simply just be doing the drawing 2 cards from the bag and placing one and either putting one back in the supply or paying double for over here. And the last thing you can do is pass. Once you pass, you are out for the round. However, you do not discard cards from your hand. At the end of the round, once everybody has passed, you will go ahead and gather up your fuel cards again and then only keep 2 of these cards. So maybe he would want, so he would keep his 1, 2, and 3. And then he would want to keep his 4 and his 6. So his 5 would get discarded. And that is all the actions. For movement, to specify how you are moving, I will move my one that is on the bug market down to the one with 2 and then over to South America. You can, instead of moving to the one with 2, I can move south into South America with 1. And then if I wanted to move west from there, I can move to Africa with the blue one. And then I could move to the one that has all 3 colors, north to the one with the blue and the purple, so on and so forth. If you want to move to the black market, you just specify that you're moving to the black market with those. That is probably the most difficult concept for remote gaming, is how do you specify how you're moving. However, most things are, you can just reference the continent that they are in and the number of spaces or colors that are available in that area. And then once the round is over, you go ahead and do your scoring like normal. And then we go ahead and start the new round. And since it's the start of the round, we do go ahead and pull out the cards that go here. Because there's no space, we go ahead and place them in this area. So we would just refer to them by the names on the top. So for instance, number 1 is Shady Contacts. Number 2 would be Intelligent Equipment. And number 3 would be Bribery. I place them so that it kind of matches the organization over here, so that's a little bit easier to follow along. And then the rest of these cards will go ahead and go back in the box. The start of round 3, you just simply turn them from the white side to the gold side, and the cards stay in the exact same place. And then the next thing we would do is reset the buyer queues. If there are more than 3, you shuffle them down and they get returned to the market. And then we draw to fill them up just as we did at the beginning of the game. And then we resolve the survey cast. What happens is for every one of these, we will draw 3 tiles. The first 2 drawn, for instance, so we have a C and a boot, would go ahead and get placed in the individual market. And then the third one would get placed at the bottom of the black market. So for instance, it is a pretty box. So it would get placed at the bottom of the orange market. All the crew cubes get returned to their owners. And we follow this for all 4 of them. And then place 4 new ones. Determine player order based on those tokens. If no one has taken any, you just remain in the same position relative to each other. And then we go ahead and fill our hands back up. Now this is going to be drafting, which is a little bit interesting for remote play. So what the running side will do will be to go ahead and hand out 8 cards to every player, and then they're going to hold them up to the camera. Now you have to keep them separate from your hands that you kept from the previous round. You also need to keep them separate for each player. So if someone has these cards dealt to them, the running side would either put them in a card holder and hold them up to the camera, or if you have an up-close camera, you can go ahead and just put them out so that people can see what they have. And you'd want to do this without looking. So you kind of need to know, oh, there needs to be one more. you kind of need to know about where to place them. So then what they would do is the remote side will go ahead and say which number they want. And it'd be either 1 through 8. And you kind of just draw your hand over until they say, yes, that's the one. And so, okay, so you go ahead and pull that out, bring up theirs, and then just stick it in. And then you take all of these and pass them on to the next player. So if this is what Brooksby did, you could just pass them on to Kitty's spot. So that way you know that Kitty would be playing those next time. And then I generally would have Kitty's starting hand over here. Grab that, hold it up, she gets to choose a card, so on and so forth. If you have enough card holders to be able to just leave them in the card holders and then hold them up to the camera, that is much preferred. So I just have multiple different card holders to be able to do this with. So that way you just have to worry about keeping the spacing decent on the back, and then be able to say, Kitty would be able to say she wants the third card, so 1, 2, 3. Then this would get added to her hand, and then this would get passed to the next person while Kitty gets a new one. Drafting is probably the most challenging concept to do remote play, so this does take a little bit of time to get used to, but the more you do it, the easier it is. And then the last thing we do is cycle the black market. The top just moves to the bottom of every stack. And then what we do is, after we get them all done, is we just confirm with each side what one is on top. So that way we can all verify that we haven't screwed anything up. Once the third round is over, you earn credits for the samples in your gallery. And then whoever has the most points is the winner. In case of a tie, the one who has the most remaining artifacts would then be considered the winner. Okay, so that was Excavation Earth. As you can see, there is a lot that goes into this game. There's a lot of mechanisms. There's a lot of just thinking this that just makes this a very crunchy game. I thoroughly enjoy it, and I really enjoy playing it remotely, in person, any way that I can. Biggest issue is the drafting at the beginning of the round. That can be very challenging to keep straight in your head. And then also to not see what the cards are if you are using an up-close camera, or just having to hold them up in front of a camera. So if you have extra card holders, definitely have them available for this game. It does slow the game down a little bit more than in person, especially if there are multiple remote gamers that don't have a copy of the game. So just bear that in mind, that the 2 times that happens, at the beginning of the second round, at the beginning of the third round, will add a little bit of time, so this does have a little bit higher of a patience level. Other than that, it would be moving, would be the other more difficult way to explain how you're doing. However, your group will get more familiar with your way of communicating through that. The biggest thing is just communicate clearly. Excavation Earth is actually a very solid 10 out of 10 for me. And that includes the little bit higher patience level required for remote gaming. This is an in-person as well as remote gaming score. I absolutely love this game. I love the thinkiness that it provides with trying to get the right artifacts and then storing them and deciding where to sell them to. It is just a really awesome, really immersive game. It's just absolutely fantastic. Just bear in mind, if you are a new remoter, that you are going to have a little bit harder time with the drafting than you would as if you were in person. But this is a very solid game. We actually have played it with just 1 copy, so it is doable with 1. However, the more people that have this awesome game, the better, the more details you can see, as this is a huge board. You do have to have the camera fairly far away from the table so that people can see it. And then when that happens, it does make it a little bit hard to be able to see all the details, especially on these cards, which I didn't mention. When you do go ahead and start the new round, I would go ahead and send a picture of these cards to each player, so that way they can easily be able to reference them by just looking at their phone. However, if you do have a copy of the game, you can just look at them. You don't have to swap between the phone and the screen and try to understand everything that's going on, as this is a very thinky, very crunchy game. Very much 10 out of 10. Absolutely adore this game. Highly recommend it. Go get yourself a copy already. But hey, until next time, have fun, be present, and be you. Thank you all for watching. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. And if you know anyone that would find value in this content, please share it with them. And if you find value, please like, comment, and subscribe. Help us spread our channel and make remote gaming a more feasible concept. Thank you, and have a great day.